Welcome to this special edition of Boreal Orchid Hunts. As you can see in front of me here, we have some stemless or pinks opening up, which is kind of the first major orchid to come alive in the late spring and early summer. For a lot of people, this lady slipper represents what they think about if they hear the word native Minnesota orchid. It's one of the most beautiful, it's one of the most abundant. Most people have come across this at some time if they spend any time in the outdoors up here in northeastern Minnesota. It just comes out and grabs you. It's large enough so that it's easy to see, and like so many of the other orchid species, it likes to have an open area where it really pops out from the background of the environment. These are one of the most abundant orchids that we have up here because they grow in a variety of different environments. In this particular case that we see here, it's relatively shallow dirt. There's a lot of bedrock in the area, exposed bedrock, and there isn't a whole lot of cover soil on that, but they grow well in that type of situation. They also grow well with the deeper soil. They do like the light. They can tolerate direct sunlight a lot better than most of the orchids can. I've seen them in swamps, in wet swamps. Not quite with their feet in the water, but sometimes pretty close. I've also seen them on the tops of the hills here in northeastern Minnesota. Some of what we call the mountains, Jack Pine Mountain or Eagle Mountain or whatever, the Sawtooth Mountains, and they'll be up right towards the top of those. So they'll go from the lowlands to the highlands and everywhere in between. I even have some pictures that I take of a pair of stemless that I take every year up off the Echo Trail that are growing on top of a large erratic rock. There's a little depression in there with a little bit of soil. And these two orchids have established themselves there. And again, once you find where they're at, you should be able to see them year after year after year because they'll grow for a long time in the same place. It's difficult to pin these down as to an area to look for them because they grow in so many different environments. Although in most cases I would have to say that there are going to be softwood trees around, pine trees, spruce trees. This moss, these types of mosses tend to be real prevalent around where you're going to find them. So if you see like a staghorn moss or some of the other greener, shorter varieties, in an open area like this time of year, from now until actually the end of June. Today is June 5th, and they'll be blooming from now until the end of June. So a wide chance and opportunity to get out and see these. I spent some time with a guy by the name of Brandon Larson at Itasca Lady Slipper Farms this week, and he gave me a little of the background as far as what wild orchids do compared to the cultured orchids that he raises. It's interesting, these slipper orchids and all of the slipper orchids have a long time period from the time that their seed is originally germinated until you see what we have here. They will grow for somewhere between 8 and 10 years, and again, this is out in the wild, 8 and 10 years before they even have a sprout that's visible. There are a few that are around here that are 2 and 3 inches high. It's taken that plant 8 to 10 years to get to that point. Once it gets to that point, it can take, depending on how rich the soil is, another 6 to 10 years before they bloom. So if you see one of these blooms, the entire process from when the seed was actually germinated with these flowers could be anywhere from 14 to 20 years. These plants are definitely at least that old, and being that I've seen them here for a while, I'm sure they're much older than that. Once they flower, they'll flower from the same root system for decades. These, again, I've been coming here for over 20 years to this particular patch to see these orchids. There are a few more than there were when I first started to visit here, but they seem to be doing really well and propagating. They raise slipper orchids at their farm in Itasca County. They've been doing it for 40 years. And they have some the other type of slippers, particularly showy ladyslippers, that they've had blooming for 40 years. It's a real tragedy when somebody comes out into the woods, finds one of these, and tries to bring them home. Number one, it's illegal. Number two, it's almost a death sentence because these will not grow well in a garden type of variety. If you try to transplant them, chances are really good you're going to kill the plant. So, number one, because it's illegal, don't do it. And number two, because of the beauty that they have out here in their natural environment, take the time to come out and see them here. Don't try to transplant that to your garden in the backyard. A lot of people I talk to and I see posts on social media will take pictures of these, stemless, and they'll say, oh, here's Minnesota state flower. And for as beautiful as they are, unfortunately that's not true. Minnesota state flower is a lady slipper, but it's a different species of lady slipper, different variety called a showy lady slipper. We have them in this part of the state, although they are relatively uncommon. They bloom a little bit later. As far as here is concerned, they're usually blooming about the 1st of July, so we won't see those for a while up here. But these are not the state flower. They're gorgeous. They're something that are going to catch your eye, and they could very well be as far as what they represent, but they're not Minnesota state flower. The major part of the orchid season is now upon us, so we'll be going out at least every other day here for the next few weeks. So come back and visit us often. In the meantime, thanks for watching and enjoy.